Okay. Welcome to Good Luck Luke. And I'm so happy today to have one of all patients are my favorite patients, but Puja is very special in my heart because of the journey that we have gone through. And so I want to welcome Puja for coming into my program, Heart to Heart. This is a podcast that I started actually right before COVID. But due to COVID and many circumstances, we stopped. Patients had told me they had a very happy experiences just listening, not feeling alone when they're listening to the podcast. So we want to continue that. That's why we're here today.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Anyway, okay, Puja. Talk to me a little bit. I think we just went through, like, Dr. Luke, I knew you would since 2017. Tell me, remind me, how we met. And
so my journey started in 2015. I went to 2 different IVF doctors. I did probably about 4 cycles with each of them. And both doctors said, you know what, you got to give it up. It's not going to happen for you. And then so I do remember going to my acupuncturist, and she's like, there's only one woman that I know that could probably help you. I know her very well. She just started to practice. She comes from Hope, and you have to go see her. But I was really adamant in not going to the city, but she's like, you have to just venture to the city. That is just something you're going to have to do. So I ventured in, and it was a Saturday. I met you. We walked in. Me and my husband walked in, and the first thing you said is, if you stick by me, I will stick by you. Those are the 2 words you said, and we'll make this happen.
Okay, well, Puja, you're going to make me cry. I know you're going to get to all the story. Oh, my God. Okay. How do you remember it was a Saturday?
Because my husband came with me. We were off of work, and then we went out to lunch afterwards. So I know it's a Saturday.
Okay.
I remember it was a Saturday.
So to give audience, I don't know, I'm aging myself, so some patients think, which is a good comment. They're like, Dr. Luke, you look so young. Actually, I've been practicing now in the city over 10 years. And when Puja met me, I was just transitioning to a new practice. And it was not even Gen X then, if you met me a little bit earlier. And I was in Upper West Side at one point, but it may be also in the same office on the 5th floor.
I was on the 5th floor.
Yeah, it was on the 5th floor because we did move for that practice. I know, it's also very fascinating that somehow with the most recent, we did move them, we've moved back to the same 5th floor, but now that 5th floor is for administrative staff. And me and Puja will tell you more about what happened on the 5th floor because this is when COVID hit and so forth. But it was 2015. I just finished my fellowship for 3-4 years and practicing. This was my 4th year, but something I became really, really passionate about was diminished ovarian reserve. I became at that point, and I never shared this with Puja, so this is a great, session with my patient. I never tell them my career and things like that. So this is my first.
I think that's why you had the confidence, because you knew I had that, but I didn't know what that was at the time. I was like, "What is that?"
And then another thing is, I was trying to break the norm because I didn't know lots of centers do not want to take patients with diminished ovarian reserve, or they would do something to them that they may not get the results.
And I personally think they do more that it gets worse.
Right.
I started at 39, I didn't have any problems, and suddenly 4 cycles later, everything just stopped. What happened? Where's my menstrual cycle? So I feel like they made things worse.
So
they don't understand
talk to me a little bit, Puja. I always put audience because some patients, as you know, this is for our patient empowerment. What happened? How you got married? Talk to me about that love story, how the baby,
Yeah, so I got married in 2015, and we decided we were going to start, planning for a family right away because, we're both older. And I wanted to get myself checked out. And I did get myself checked out. And they said, I even got myself checked out before I got married. And they basically said I was okay, but I had to do it in a fast pace. I couldn't wait around a couple of years. So we tried, but it wasn't, we weren't successful. So I decided to go to a fertility doctor to see what was going on. And they were like, well, you need IVF. And then after that,
And sperm was fine.
Suppose fine.
Your tubes are fine.
My uterus is fine. Every test came back normal. Everything was fine. And
you were young. You just said 35.
Yeah, I was 39.
Oh, 39. Okay.
Yeah. But
still very end of 40.
I started my just checking on my fertility at 38.
Got you. Okay.
And even my AMH was good.
Okay.
At that time.
The ovaries was fine. They didn't say like,
and
oh my God.
AMH was really, really good. Like it was like 2 or something. It was like really good. And then I did 4 cycles of IVF in like 2 years. And it went from like 2 down to like 0.5. Mm-hmm. And then when I went to see you, it was like 0.04.
Yes.
It was just like it was just like what happened overnight, and I believe it's definitely over medicating. Like my body was already old, and now you're over medicating the process instead of understanding the process. So.
And just want the audience to know was AMH. Ovarian reserve are defined by 3 parameters. One is day 3 FSH. Second, follicular count on each ovaries. During ultrasound, you can take a look at that. And then AMH, which is anti-Müllerian hormone, where we expect in a patients, they are in their 30s, should be ranging between 1.5 onward. It can be as high. If you have something called PCOS, you can even go to 10. We don't anything above 1.5. We say, oh, okay, you are average, or sometimes some patients expect want to have 20 eggs retrieval. So I usually try to equate AMH with a number, like 2.5 is equal to 10-ish. So again, guys, there's no absolute. We never, as a human, many of our numbers never define, like we never define us by number. So AMH can be 2.5, can be 2.0. So from what Puja is saying, that she did have a good quantity of eggs.
Yes. At that age, yes, I was average.
Wow, and talk to me a little bit. Like, what did the doctor say? Like before you seeing me?
Well, I decided to do IUIs in the beginning, so I must have done like 10 IUIs. I don't even remember. It was so many, and it was just not working. And then they decided to do IVF, and they pumped me with so many hormones. I mean, triple the amount that we probably did. It was so many, and I felt so sick, and then suddenly, like, just my menstrual cycle was just not coming back correctly.
Will you start to be irregular when you saw me? Or you were still regular? I remember we were waiting for the egg.
Yeah, I was
with like some cycles.
Yeah.
You're like, Dr. Wen is coming. I'm like, Puja, don't be. This is on the 5th floor.
Because I had told you that my menstrual cycle is irregular now, and that's why you said, we have to be patient at this point to get this. Like, we can't do the 2-week process with me. We can't hope in 2 weeks we're going to get enough just to get me
We
pregnant.
can also pour you with medications. Usually classically many centers or many other doctors will pour you with medication and say, let's hit that ovary harder to get more eggs.
It didn't work, though.
It didn't.
They kept pumping me more and more every cycle, and it actually backfired and did nothing. Absolutely zero.
Then how... Puja, you also have a very unique medical history. I don't know if you want to share. Like when you're young, there was things.
Yeah, when I hit 26, I got meningitis from the World Trade Center. I was working the World Trade Center because I was part of media at that time. So, so I got sick.
You mean from the 9/11?
9/11. I was working down in Ground Zero, like just covering with the news. And so I got sick, and I became paralyzed. So all these IVF doctors kept equating everything that was going on with me because I had meningitis in the past, and I was paralyzed from the waist down. So I must have messed.
And how long? First of all, thank you for all your work and reporting back in. That it was a very traumatic day. I still remember I was in medical school. How long? What happened? Like you were? I mean, it was very stressful. I bet it was on Ground Zero, and
I went home. I had a headache, and I just didn't wake up.
And you were working there day in and day out?
It was different segments, whether we were doing like charity segments with the governor or we were doing like firefighter segments. It was all different. And, I was part of local news.
And do it dust, still not clean up at that point.
It was like, it was dust, debris everywhere. Yeah. It was, it was bad. So I was always down there. I was always traveling.
And how long the duration before the meningitis start to?
A few months.
Wow. So you were there for a few months. Okay.
Yeah. It was like, I think, I got sick it was less than a year. So I was sick within 6 months from then.
Okay. Paralyzed is a big deal. So how long,
I woke up paralyzed after being in a coma for probably 2 months or something. Yeah.
I bet your parents, your family were. That's a big deal. I remember that was my first.
Right,
I
you were concerned about that.
I was talking to you for a while on that because obviously I don't have lots of patience.
Because I lost my period after that, and then I didn't get it back for a year.
You also had a Foley for going.
Yeah, I had a Foley for almost a year too. Yeah.
And then the
self-cath and all that stuff, yeah.
And then the difficulty of pregnancy, maybe because of that trauma.
Right. So they didn't even know if my uterus was correct, if it wasn't. Like, all these doctors were just like throwing a lot of things at me. So
Puja, talk to them. I usually in my podcast, I always let my patient talk most about their journey and what happened with me and their feelings. And, obviously majority of our patients has some experience somewhere. And this podcast I want to focus on is quantity of eggs and the different approach that we have done. And also just how did you find your doctors? There's so many questions out there.
The first doctor was a referral from my friend. And everybody goes there. It's North Shore, Manhasset, everybody goes there. So I went, and she obviously didn't specialize in what I had. And then the second one was RMA, which everybody goes to too. And that was right by my house around the corner. I did everything so convenient to my work.
And it's true. Yeah. Lots of our patients, they say, Dr. Luk, thank you. I can't come because I live in, I don't know, somewhere, Long Island. So
it's very inconvenient when you're working. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and then finally I was like, well, this is, we're at the end of my journey, so I have to find the last doctor and then call it quits. Basically, that's where I was at. I was going to go to the last doctor and call it quits.
And you found your acupuncture. That's how you...
Acupuncture, yeah. She was in Long Island, and she was treating me for years since I started my journey. And finally, she was like, go to Dr. Luk. Because she kept saying, go to the city, and I kept saying, no. And then finally, at the end, she's like, it's time. You need to go to her. You have to go to her.
So it was amazing. I had you. I remember, and please refresh my memory. I remember we did a couple of cycles irregular. I'm trying to chase for that egg. I don't even remember that. We'll have this, and it's like, say, cis.
But we didn't do regular cycles. We always did. We did no medication because you were like, you can't. You're very it's diminishing. So the more medication you pump, the worse it's gonna get. So I do remember I didn't get pumped with medication at all. I think birth control was the only thing.
Yes, because the FSH, it was very high.
Yeah, to lower it down.
Yeah, to lower it down.
It's kind of manipulating the body.
Yeah, with high numbers, 50, 60 at one point.
Right, and then increase the estrogen, and then hopefully that will cause a follicle to grow.
Yeah, oh my God. Puja, you can be a science teacher.
Well, you taught me. You're like, estrogen is water to the follicle, right? It makes things grow.
Yes. Okay, great. And then I think when we're chasing the follicles, as you and I it was not that easy because it's not 1 month per egg. It's going to be a year. You may have 4 retrieval because now we don't know when is this follicle
we
falling.
Were doing it every cycle. I was coming in every cycle.
Yes.
And if I get an egg, Dr. Najak would take it out. And I still remember I would do no anesthesia. So they would take, because I couldn't do it every month. Right. And he would take it out. I was in pain. And some days it was like, we got it. And some months it was like, sorry, it's a cyst. And he would literally, it would be thrown in the garbage right in front of me kind of thing. I'm like, okay. And then, he was upset. I was upset. But it was next month. And we just kept doing it over and over. And years passed by. And then the pandemic hit.
Yes. So now is the pandemic. And we did 2 years. Some months travel or whatever reason we're not together, but this was a project because now Puja's cycle was a little bit irregular. You were irregular, and I am trying to capture the egg. So this is part of what we call embryo banking. And now there's also another instruction, an interesting fact. And some patients want to say day 3 versus day 5. The problem with day 3 versus day 5 is that some embryos will not make it to day 5, blastocysts. And Puja, I want to know before me, since you went to a couple doctors before me, were they all wanting testing?
They all did day 5. I got one, and he couldn't even fertilize it. He called me and he was like, I can't even fertilize. And I'm just like, he's like, but it's a perfect egg. And we can't figure out what's going on. Everything is just a blame game when it comes to fertility. I feel like sometimes when people just don't know, doctors don't know how to handle the situation.
It is hard. And it's not perfect. And Puja, I know, is very graciously come to my podcast today, but it is not, there are times with Puja, Puja may say, Dr. Luk, what the heck? Why didn't this happen?
Can I just say that every egg that you retrieved, every single one. I must have had 15, 20. I don't even remember over the years. You had so many. You fertilized everyone. I don't have one so far that you did not fertilize. So for that man to not be able to do it, I won't say his name, that was garbage.
I know, but okay, thank you.
Because you know why? Because they're dealing with the masses.
I know.
And they're dealing with 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds. So for me, it's like, they don't want me. It's easier to take the 20-year-old, which is easy, you know what I mean?
Of course, so,
Yeah.
yes. I totally know what you mean. Because my training is those standard that I speak.
Like you, for every single one, I was like so shocked. I was like, oh my God, another one. I was like, so more happy that it was being fertilized than anything at this point.
But I think there was also something is about faith in the doctor and also really honest with the patient. And this is hard. I answer this question every day. That was 2017. Today is 2023. So the last 6 years, I have countless conversations about day 3 versus day 5.
Yeah.
And this get back to what does that mean? And I always tell my patients, ultimately nature select the normal embryo. If it's bad, it's not going to. And quite honestly, nature is still selecting majority of normal embryo because everyone's having sex. Majority of babies are result from sex, not IVF. Yeah. So you never know which sperm is going up there and which egg is being ovulated that month. Yeah. So I did talk to Puja. It's like, you have tried so many times. Maybe we should not all doing blasts. We should do a diversification, some blast, some day 3. So it is true, however, not that any other doctors are not scientific. Day 5 embryos, which is meant to be blastocysts, are always better implantation rate than day 3. But there are patients, I truly believe, that would never make it to blastocysts for whatever the reason is. Either the cell is not the vitamin to the egg, whatever, cellular structure, things that you cannot test by genetics, something that cannot make to propel to blastocysts. They may make it to day 3. And that may be 4 or 5%, depending on age groups, right? That may be live birth. I don't want to sacrifice that 4 to 5% because we do have those 4, 5% stories here like today where they may make it, and if we have transfer it and not instead of putting it in the laboratory. So those are lots of personal decision that, my patients and I have to make every day. But
I remember my decisions every day. It was a decision, and I'm like, you're the mama bear, just pick it. I don't know. Like, I was just always blank on the decision. I was like, Dr. Luk, you just pick. Whatever you want, I'll just say yes to it. Like, I just didn't know.
It was hard. Yeah, because some of this, why I just said the logic. Sometimes I say 3 times, patients. I say at the beginning of the cycle, I say at the end. Patient was like, well, Dr. Luk, you just pick. Then I go through the logic because there's still blind spot. Puja has been very humbling, my experience. And I know we're going to go on to COVID and how we went through that together. But it is a very humbling experience because at the end, I don't know which one is the one. And I sometimes have to make sure it's right for you socially or financially, for you and your partner. And that's very hard to get that logic. But I spend majority of the time to explain people kind of the reasoning than science.
And in my case, what we both had decided was like, hey, we got the eggs and we got the embryos. We're fertilizing and we got some banked. At that point, by the time pandemic hit, we had like 4 or 5 banked.
Right.
And we're like, we have it, but guess what? We have another problem. And I'm like, what? And he's like, we don't know if your uterus is acceptable. Like, we don't know.
Yes,
like, there's a 2-part infertility. Like, we got one end. Now we got to figure out if your body will actually get pregnant.
That's
sometimes there's unknowns of why women don't get pregnant either.
That is correct. It
was like, oh my God, another problem on top of a problem.
Well, during the COVID, so let me explain what happened during COVID. I think that is, so now we went into 2019, 20. Puja is still with me because she started 2017, right?
Yeah.
We started together 2017, 18.
And I've moved up to the 11th floor now.
Yes. We're still actually renovating. So we're actually on the 5th floor. And I know Puja is going to send me some bad pictures.
You're right.
I was in a white suit because COVID was closing every IVF center.
Right.
And I don't know Puja was one of them, but I have patients like Dr. Luk. I'm going to menopause in about 9 months. If you shut it down, you shut my hope of having a child.
Yeah.
And many places I shut down. I understand your concerns, but you can't do that to me. So I stay behind during the COVID time. Yep. Just me and Puja and one MA.
And one other, and there was another patient.
But lots of our clinical assistants working from home. They did give instructions, but it's me and one, and I was with you during scan, and she has a picture of me, which is funny. She was like, Dr. Lou, remember this? And I'm like in this white suit. Tyvek suit.
It was.
And I have this mask. You're like, Dr. Luke, that looks hilarious. I remember you I was scanning. I came in with my Tyvek suit because we don't know what this COVID is.
And you could hear like the pressure of the air going into the suit. I'm like, what's going? Is she an astronaut? What's happening in this place? But honestly, coming to Generation Next during the pandemic, it was my escape because everybody's doing nothing. But I was like, I got a lot going on. Like I was always busy because I was doing IVF.
Well, first of all, it was quiet. There's no traffic.
There's no traffic.
Whole New York City was shut down. So if some of you want to look back what happened in 2000, this is the peak. We have doctors getting sick. But we really held it. I mean, I do have to say I had lots of balls because I felt like I don't want it to go away. Like I'm serving you guys. And I remember patients like, Dr. Luk cannot go away during this, because if I lose this cycle, I don't know how many cycles left because I take care of diminished ovarian reserve patients. So there was 2 or 3 months like discouraging, people don't do it, but majority of our patients are working from home. They're not, I say that was the safest time, actually, I told patients. Because with your partner, there's no one in the public transport and people are driving majority because they're so scared. So it's interesting. Yeah. I don't know. This was
it was funny when I walked in and you had the suit on. I was like, Dr. Luk, you know what? And you're like, what? I'm like, I'll tell you one thing. If I'm going to get pregnant, it's going to be during the pandemic. And you just looked at me and you're like, why? I'm like, because there's no stress. It is so fun at home. Like there's nothing to do but to relax and not even think of anything.
Yes.
And you just looked at me and you're like, all right.
So Puja, after we got it, we tried to transfer. I would let you talk about the rest of the stories. So
we did our first transfer during the pandemic in July because that's the first time the governor let us do transfers.
Yeah, oh my God, I forgot about that. Yeah,
remember there was a governor who had mandated no transfers, but retrievals were allowed.
Yeah, or the ASRM or some committee. Maybe not Governor Cuomo.
Yeah, during January.
But they released a statement. Yes. I have to think back.
From January to July, I did all retrievals. And then in July, you're like, okay, we have a lot. Like, let's just try putting them. I got to see what's going on. So we put it in July, and I got pregnant. Or June or July, I got pregnant. Yeah. And you were like, oh, we were all like, and then I lost the baby 2 months later. It was a miscarriage, my first miscarriage.
Yes. But then she can get pregnant. I was very excited.
So Dr. Luk was so happy that I could just get pregnant. Like, this is a big deal right now.
Yeah, your uterus can stick. And I got so excited because, And Puja, came on, go wherever.
So then I continued, 4 months later, I became pregnant again. And this time it stuck. And months went on and Dr. Luk's like, oh, here we go. This one's gonna happen. And so 9 months come and I'm just not feeling good. Like, I just feel like something is off, but there's nothing wrong with me, no blood pressure issues. It's just inside, a women's intuition. And I kept telling my doctor, I feel off. Something's wrong with the baby. And she's like, the baby's fine. And now I'm literally 1 week away from delivering this baby. 1 week away. My date is there because I'm an older woman. They have a date set for me. I'm a 1 week. And I walk into my OB and I'm like, I feel like the baby doesn't move correctly. And then she's like, but that's been going on since your pregnancy. Your baby just isn't that moving type. Plus my umbilical cord was set on a higher level where it was like a cushion. So I couldn't feel it as much. And then next thing you know, 2 days later, I go back to the hospital near my house because I still felt it. And they're like, the baby's fine. Look, she's sleeping. Look at her eyes. Blah, blah. She has 120 heartbeats. She's perfect. I went home 4 hours later and she passed away in my stomach. Yeah.
And I got a call from a doctor who was actually my mentor at Harvard, at Mass General when I was younger, doing my residency. It was one of the toughest phone calls I have taken in the last, 10 years. It has happened, not that it hasn't not, but Puja, you can see how close we are. And so she's like my family. And I have breakdowns afterwards with her, even when she came back and see me later. It was so emotional for me. And as a doctor, I try not to show that to Puja because she's so strong. She showed me I couldn't control my tears when she showed me one of the memorial service you had for your baby.
I did a little memorial a year later,
And and then when we were still trying to have the baby, and she came back right after the loss, and it was hard. Puja, you're so amazing woman. She pushed me on. She's like, Dr. Luk, let's go again. Come on. my heart's like, Puja, are you ready? You know, me, I'm still healing. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing to say. I mean, as the doctor, I should be like, be your, you know, iron.
Well, I think
there
was a lot of stress too for you because I lost a child, and now you're thinking, what do we have in the reserve, and is it going to be possible, and could it be? And there's other questions. When you give birth, the uterus changes, and you don't know if that uterus changed for the good or if it changed for the bad. Like there's a lot of things that happen during.
And yes, and I know I was digging because I hated the loss. I hated the despair. I'm like, hey, Puja, and then I try to control myself because I don't want to make you also question about yourself and your body, and that you cannot be a mom because that's what you ever wanted. So that was a big, I think, attachment to it. And
yeah, and we did another cycle, and I tried and didn't get pregnant. And at that point, I was questioning myself. I'm like, did something happen in the uterus? She passed away. Maybe it was something wrong in my uterus, that something happened, and maybe I won't get pregnant again. And that's it. So then the surrogate came into play, where you yelled and yelled at me about the surrogate. And said, do not get a surrogate.
Sometimes I don't remember.
Yeah, you're like, do not get the surrogate. You just kept saying it. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. Do not get it. But I insisted on the surrogate. Yeah, I insisted.
Because as a doctor, it's very scary to make those absolute statements.
Yeah.
Because you don't know for 100%. Because you never know.
No, because Dr. Haid had done the test on my uterus.
Yes, and then I knew in my scientific sense, like, it should not be your uterus.
Yeah. I know. But I did get the surrogate, and it didn't work out. Because it wasn't meant to work out with her. But what the surrogate did for me is it gave me peace of mind and it gave me confidence because I knew that all the stress was going to be on her and not me. Right. So all that stress I had built up, it was off my shoulders. So after the surrogate didn't work out, you're like, let's just try. The surrogate we can't use her. And we put it in, but there was no stress at that point because, I was dealing with so much with the surrogate that I became pregnant.
Yes. And then?
9 months later, I had a little baby girl.
What a journey. 2017. Last 6 years is just, you're an amazing woman.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
4 months ago, I had a little
And
baby
I still
girl.
remember your mom. You guys came. I also crying. Your mom was like, Dr. Luk, please take care of her. She was so sweet.
Yeah.
And that was after the loss. So I know I need to do it. And obviously every day I have all this from our patients, but really it's truly a big part, I think, a partnership between me and you to keep this going. And so, and it's ultimately you, Puja. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
How's the baby?
She's doing good.
She's doing
good. She's a handful, but she's doing good.
Yes, we talk about, welcome to mommy's world. No much sleep, so.
She's running our house, basically. We're just like, the servants running around after her.
I know we're going to be wrapping up, and I just want you to tell me what's the one thing for all the women who are struggling with infertility, you've gone through really, truly all the ups and all the downs. What's the one thing you want them to know?
I would say to persevere forward. There's hope. So if you give up, you're kind of giving up on something that could be. But if you could do it, keep doing it. And finding the right doctor is key. Because if I would have found Dr. Luk at 39, my child would be probably how many years old by now? And I wouldn't have probably gone so many ups and downs because my fertility was perfect at that point. So I think it's really key to take a minute to find the right doctor.
But because of your age and you did have like some of the preeclampsia you mentioned.
I actually didn't have scientific preeclampsia. Mm-hmm. Like my blood pressure was perfect. Even during delivery, my blood pressure.
And you delivered at 40?
I did it at 36 weeks. Yes. Because of my mental state of losing my daughter at 35 weeks.
Right. No, we talk about that. Yes.
There was nothing wrong with me. It was just me just fearing that 35, 36, and I couldn't deal. Mentally.
And how old were you at that point now?
I'm 47 when I gave birth to Mela. Yeah. I gave birth to Milana at 45.
They're watching you like a hawk since what happened with the last.
Yeah.
I told you. Do you remember I said, don't let them go. Just stay in the hospital. I told Puja just stay. I hope all the OBGYNs are not going to yell at me. I'm like, don't just let just stay there. Do you remember I said don't let them
and
get?
I followed that. I followed that because at the end I was like, I had an intuition the first time. I didn't do I didn't do enough. So this time I just kept going to labor and delivery every 2 days.
Yeah, I told her just stay.
Every 2 days I was in labor and delivery, and they kind of knew me. They called me the Indian girl. She's back. She's outside.
Oh God. Oh.
And I did it for 3 weeks straight, every 2 days. We had a thing, me and my husband, every Saturday, and we had a date of every day we were going to go to labor and delivery.
Okay, so this is my last question from me to you. How do you muster the strength when you're at the low, like when we lost our first little baby? That's so late in the prayer. How did you, I still remember that effort, that spirit that you came to my office and Dr. Lisa, I'm like, huh? Let's do it. Let's try again. And I'm like.
I think it was just because it was years and years of just working so hard at something. And it's like, how can I just give up? And she's there for a reason. Like, if I gave up on her, like,
yes.
It's unfair. Like, yes. she came to me for a reason. So I needed to give her a sister.
Right.
Well, I didn't know it was a sister. I thought it was a brother, but it came out to be a sister. So I had to, I did it for her.
Well, Puja, I know. I told you. See, you're going to make me cry now. Thank you so much for coming here today. I really appreciate for you sharing a story, and it's really amazing to have you.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Luk. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.